Hello, in this video, we're going to walk through data profiling of a data set based on cheese and cheese contests. So there's a lot going on here, a lot of information, a lot of repeat information, capital letters over here, and we've got some null values over here, all kinds of stuff going on. So this is a very realistic data set. Imagine this is about a product category or listing of products in different categories that your company might have. Perhaps this is a product manager rather than cheesemaker name. Perhaps this is the brand instead of the company name, etc. Perhaps this is the country of origin or where it was made, but you get the idea. And then we've got some different differentiations here based on that product. So this could be easily used as an example for supply chain or purchasing or operations, product development, marketing, etc. Okay. So the first thing I like to do is understand how many columns, how many rows of data that I have. So it goes to K, okay? So not too bad there. 11, 12, 13 or so columns there. And if we go all the way down, we'll get to 1677, but we subtract 1 off of that because we have the header, field name, variable name, whatever you would like to call it. Okay, so we've got over 10,000 responses here, but I like to call responses, or you might call it cells within Excel. Now, depending on your purpose and your business objective, you're going to dig into this a different way. For example, if you are studying a particular company only, well, then you're going to care more about company data. But if you care more about what cheeses, no matter what company they are coming out of Alabama, and it just so happens it's the same cheese company, you would care more about the dairy state. Now, British Columbia, for example, we have 3 companies, 1, 2, 3. Different cheeses, looks like a yogurt, a feta, cranberry, that sounds great, a blue Capri, one of my favorites. I love blue cheeses. You can eat them off the block. Now, different cheesemakers. So that's what's interesting here for you, is that we have different cheesemakers even at the same company. In fact, we will go take it a step further, say all this goat product, I mean, there's another goat there. They're all goats, actually, but they have different people that apparently are responsible for them in making them. Okay? But they're not all in the same category. So it says goat here, but if you look, we have different categories that those cheeses go to. So the data analyst would learn a lot there, because oftentimes we think, oh, goat cheese, because I see it at the store. And it's goat cheese versus cow cheese, the stuff you're used to growing up on. Well, actually, if you break it further, there's actually different types. Okay? Now, that's a naming convention that an organization would put forward. Now, source of milk, we have this stuff here, which is great information for us. Company ID, which oftentimes we would like to see this over near the company, just for quick reference, so we're not going back and forth and all that kind of stuff. Because sometimes we like to talk in terms of company number 135 or 132 or 16, rather than saying this whole spiel of Goat's Pride Dairy at McLennan Creek. It might be easier for us to reference it as company 132, and then in a discussion, if somebody were to ask about it, we could have a reference sheet that has the name of the company. Okay. Now, the really good stuff to me when I was reviewing this data set earlier, and believe me, I would love to just study the blue mold cheese because I love blue cheese, as I said before, and I want to find some good stuff. Okay. So, entry number, we don't quite know what this means, but we see 1 through 8, at least for this group, so make sure you expand this. And now we have 1 through 77. Which is still quite a lot. But we also have placement here. Now we have a lot of null values. So we have to consider that when we do our analysis, because we have zeros as well. So does 0 mean null in this case? Did the person that entered this data mean to just leave it blank? Or did they mean that 0 is a 0? Because folks, 0 and null are not scientifically the same thing. Okay? 0 and null are not scientifically the same thing. Oftentimes people mean null when they put 0, or they mean 0 when they put null, or when they leave it blank, but it doesn't always ring true for that. Mathematically, if I just take a moment here and I do 5, 10, and I get an average of 7.5, if I go here and I go down to the third row, I still get 7.5 as my average in Excel. But if I put a 0 there and I grab all 3 of those, I now have an average of 5 because Excel is going to calculate that 0. So if I get rid of that 0 and leave it as a null value, an empty value, and then still highlight it, it's back to the 7.5. So we have to be very, very careful that we don't mix up zeros and nulls. Okay. Now in this data set, it's mostly going to be for descriptive statistics. There really isn't any predictive power in this data set. You could go ahead and use this data set, use the cheesemaker name, use the state, do something interesting with the cheese name if you have a hypothesis that the name of the cheese bears some predictive power into improving the placement or the ranking or the results or the sales. But looking at this alone, I don't know. I mean, we might theorize, we might set up several studies, one for every cheese name, perhaps, and see if there's anything to it. In fact, that'd be a fun thing for another video to pursue. State, does a particular state, province, etc. have any predictive power? And vice versa. Now, one thing that I will also show you is we can go to our categories such as Italian cheeses, Italian type cheese, and we have 103 out of 1676. But within that group, there's a subcategory, several subcategories. Let's go to HB. And now we have Italian type cheeses, cow, pasteurized, whole bunch of companies, HB, entries, not placements, different companies, different states, and burrata is actually all of them. But the name, see, remember what I was saying before about the name? Is that the real name? Is this the real name, or did somebody just quickly whip up that it's a burrata cheese? Okay, so there's another example of your naming conventions and why it is so important to get it right. Okay, because would the data analyst just go in and say, you know what, burrata, it's just burrata? Or would they say, oh, nope, it's 2 different types because that's what the data says? Okay, so you have to be careful with that stuff. Have to be careful when studying up that and considering naming conventions. So hopefully this was helpful to you to give you just another look into a data set and some things to think about as you work through it. Thanks for watching.